joined by Michael Gudadero at The Big Gouda on Twitter. And you can find us on YouTube. Just type my name in, Doug Shane. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click the notification icon. We are live every Sunday morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, taking you up to lock. We're live Friday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern, giving you your first look, the kickoff for the NFL week. And, of course, you can find all of our work for every sport we cover, banksterdfs.com/subscribe. $3.99 a week gets you all of our articles, player pools, the best Slack chat in the business, and like everything. You get everything. You get it all for $3.99 a week at banksterdfs.com. Gouda, welcome to the show this week. And we did it on Friday, and I'm going to come right back to you and see if anything's changed. I'm just going to say two words and let you talk. Taysom Hill.
Yeah, Taysom Hill. Like we said Friday, so the easy part on this is FanDuel at tight end eligible. Cash games, lock button, don't even think twice about it. In GPPs on FanDuel, you're probably going to want to own him anywhere from 50 to 70% of your lineups at least. And then from there, you kind of have to decide on a GPP side what you want to do. I think the better option there, if you do fade him at all in GPPs, just to gain some leverage. Don't look at guys in his price range. Look at paying up. Like look at the Goddards or Hoopers or even Mark Andrews. Guys that have that high potential, because Hill playing quarterback, there's a good chance he's getting 15 to 20 points if he's successful and can do what we kind of think he can do. So you really need to look at a tight end that it's not going to give you 6 or 7 points. You really need a tight end that's got that high ceiling that can approach 20 points or even potentially higher than that. So I think you have to look for those kind of guys as your leverage plays in GPPs on FanDuel. Another thing, Doug, that you brought up, which I think is kind of intriguing with FanDuel, is if you use Taysom Hill, use Jared Cook at the flex. Nobody's going to own Cook, at all. Probably sub 1% ownership. Always risky having a tight end at flex, just because a little less potential than a running back or a receiver. But hey, Cook has one of those games, goes out there, gets you 50 yards and a touchdown, or even multiple touchdowns. It's going to be a great spot that nobody's going to own. And then on DraftKings, it's a little more, I guess, easier, you can say. In cash, he's still very much cash viable. I've got him in my cash builds. I like the way that the lineups come out and the savings that it produces. And, again, to return value on it, he doesn't need that strong of a game. We're going to assume his rushing floor is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 yards. That alone, the rushing floor gets you 1x alone. So you don't need that much on the passing end to get you, anywhere. We like our quarterbacks at least go 3 to 4x, but again, it's pretty easy for him to get to 3x if you've got a rushing floor that's right putting you at 1x. And then on the GPP side is where it's going to become interesting. You've got a couple of ways to play this. I'm anticipating Hill probably going to be about 25% owned. The GPPs, depending which ones you're doing, whether they're single entry or they're the 150 max entry ones, you could see some of the ownership even go as high as 35%, or maybe even down to 15%. What I'm doing this week, I have Hill at about 15% in my personal builds. I'm underweighting the field on it because there are some paths to him not doing well potentially also. And, you're just not using him is a good leverage spot. Having exposure in that game, Matt Ryan's going to be very low owned. He's going to be a good leverage spot there. To continue to have, a stack in that game, but have it, lower owned, that'll work there. And you're also, and then at that point, you're looking at just kind of any quarterback in a sense. Not that you want to use anybody, but, just coming off of Hill will help you on those GPP builds. But I'm definitely underweighting the field in GPP because I do want to see what he's going to do and what type of upside he could have. I mean, you need exposure because, one, the savings is great, and the builds that you can get with him in there are fantastic. But then it's just, it's a matter of kind of seeing what he's going to do and what he's going to be. I mean, there are some reports this morning saying that really the only reason Hill is starting is because Sean Payton is stubborn. He's been working on this guy for a couple of years. And with the money they spent, they do envision him as the future franchise quarterback. So it's like, well, we got to see what we have. So even though Winston might be a better quarterback for them to win because of the way that they're built. Peyton's going with him. So I think with that as well, we could probably take some of those concerns away about the amount of snaps that he'll may see, or if he's even playing the whole game. I think he'll be in there the whole game. I don't think Peyton will admit defeat on it until after the game potentially, and maybe starting Winston next week if things go bad with Hill. I don't think we see a scenario where Hill gets pulled or anything like that. So I think we can be at least confident he's going to be out there enough to pay off his salary if he does well.
I think that one of the best leverage plays you can play this week is any tight end not named Taysom Hill on FanDuel. I have zero faith in Sean Payton. I understand the stubbornness. I just can't pull the trigger on it. I think, listen, if I knew Taysom Hill was absolutely going to get every single snap, I don't see how he doesn't 4x his salary on DraftKings. He needs 125 passing yards at a touchdown, 50 yards rushing at a touchdown. He's been getting close to 50 yards rushing, not as the starting quarterback. If you truly believe he's going to play every snap, then there's no reason he shouldn't be your cash game quarterback on DraftKings. And he absolutely needs to be in cash on FanDuel regardless. But in a GPP and FanDuel, I think the best thing you can do if you want to leverage the field is, if you're running one lineup, I may not play Taysom Hill if you just want to go total win or lose, if it's all or nothing. But if you're running like 150 lineups, I think Guda's opinion of going under 70% is probably the best way to go. I think I have 50% of him right now, and I'm very comfortable with that number in 150 lineups. And, I do think Jared Cook is a real interesting play on FanDuel because he's 6,100, so you wouldn't play him anyway at that price. It's an awfully high price. If you run him instead of Taysom Hill, I think that's going to be real interesting. And then, as Guda had also mentioned, you run Taysom Hill with Jared Cook in the flex. I think that's going to be a really underowned. I don't know if underowned is the right word, because underowned would imply that it should be owned, and it probably shouldn't, but that's going to be a really low-owned build. So that's a way to kind of look at that game as well. Just got word before we talk about the other name that we wanted to talk about, we were talking about off the air. Just got word that, okay, Stafford is in, Damian Harris is in, Sony Michel activated off IR, but inactive for the game today. And Teddy Bridgewater, a lot of confusion. I'm still trying to research it. He was made active, and then Jay Glazer reported he won't play, and now they're saying he's inactive. So hopefully we'll get word on that as one of us goes into a monologue. The other one will check in and see what the deal is with Teddy Bridgewater. It sounds like he's not playing, though, and it sounds like PJ Walker is in there, which then brings him as a GPP pivot for me for Taysom Hill on DraftKings at quarterback in a GPP. Because if we're looking here, they're both sitting at $4,800. And if I don't know how much you guys know about PJ Walker. If you played XFL, you know a lot about PJ Walker. He was the best player in the XFL. Can throw. Dude can throw. He can run. He likes to take shots down the field. And his college coach was Matt Rule, who is the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. His college top wide receiver was Robbie Anderson, who is the top wide receiver, or one of the two top wide receivers for the Panthers. So there is some correlation there and some familiarity. Yeah. So if you want some leverage in a GPP at the same price point, I know Guda had said spend up, and that is a great way to pivot off of that's a good way to pivot off of Taysom Hill. But if you want to play at that same price point, you want to go total pivot stack, you go with Robbie Anderson and PJ Walker, and then you run it back with maybe TJ Hawkinson or Adrian Peterson, Marvin Jones, and that's a way to avoid a New Orleans game. Also for New Orleans, Marchart is out today. Increase the love for Calvin Ridley in that respect. The other name we were talking about, Guda, who was the other name we wanted to talk about? What was the other one that was the pressing name that made you want to throw up?
Kalen Ballage. Kalen Ballage is I think he's the other big what do we do this week? And yeah, I mean, I'll let you start on. Start on this one because you've got some good insight on it. You're a little more unbiased on it than I am, I would say.
I mean, okay. First of all, I'm real biased when it comes to Kalen Ballage because I watched that 7-touchdown game in Arizona State, and I have loved Kalen Ballage since then. I'm like, he did it once, he can do it again. He's gonna score 7 touchdowns a game. It's insane. But listen, folks, if we get off the fact that Kalen Ballage's name is Kalen Ballage. Perhaps we would start to see that this guy has actually been playing really well. He has 40 touches over the last 2 weeks, including 9 targets in the past game. He's got at least fares each of the last 2 weeks, and pretty much planted his flag on this guy being his top running back. I don't see why he'd move to Josh Kelly at this point. Ballage is still kind of a young player, so it's not like a Frank Gore, the Michael P. Ryan situation where let's see what we got. I mean, Ballage is a young guy. He's only the 3rd year in the league. Let's see what he's doing. He looked great in the last 2 matchups. awful against the run. Troymaine Pope was a guy who was getting some run prior to Balaj taking over this role, but why would Pope is nothing compared to what Balaj could possibly be, and Josh Kelly has fallen out of favor with the coaching staff. Now, Anthony Lynn is a terrible, horrible, god-awful coach, and is going to look like a genius next to Gase, of course, but he's a horrible coach, and so it's possible he could just decide to throw it 60 times, or he could give the ball to Troymaine Pope or whoever else, but if you just look at the way he's been used, and you look at the matchup and the Jets against the run, the Jets have given up 100 rushing yards in every two. One of those games was 98 yards to Buffalo in week 1, and one of those games was like 40 yards to the Chiefs, and the Chiefs threw for 400 yards. That was just one of those weird games where, we actually use the Chiefs as leverage in a GPP. I don't know if the Chargers are going to do that. Chargers like to run slow pace. They like to run the ball. They gave the ball last week when they should have been throwing. They gave the ball to Balaj anyway. If we get rid of the name and we just look at the numbers, Kalen Balaj should be in the same price range right now as Ezekiel Elliott. He has played better than Ezekiel Elliott over the last couple of weeks. He should be a $6,500 running back. He should be in this range. He's not. He's in. Oh, God, I have to take a deep breath before I say this. For me, Kalen Balaj is a cash game lock. I have got him. He is one of those guys that I am putting in my lineup, and I'm going to build around him, and I'm not taking him out. The work's got to be there. The price is there. The matchup is there. If he keeps getting the 20 touches a week like he had the last 2 weeks, I don't see how Kalen Balaj isn't the right play, especially when you consider the fact that DeAndre Swift, who would have been a play over Balaj for me, isn't playing. Damian Harris, who has a great matchup, doesn't catch enough passes, and I really want running backs who catch passes in cash games. On DraftKings, on FanDuel, I'm more than willing to go to like a Derrick Henry type player who doesn't catch passes.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at a guy like Henry, who seems really safe for cash because it's Derrick Henry. But Derrick Henry, based on his price point on DraftKings, needs 24 fantasy points to hit 3x value, and that's what 4 is 3x value. Derrick Henry has hit that so far this year. He's only gone over 20 points 3 times. Now, Derrick Henry has hit 30 points twice, and he has that big game ability in him. And so I think that it's really important that we look at him in tournaments. He's my number 1 owned tournament running back. But in cash, I can't do it. I can't look at Derrick Henry in cash, particularly on DraftKings. Again, on FanDuel, I have him as a cash game running back. But we need those pass catches. He has 5 targets over the last 4 weeks. He's only caught 3 of those passes. Aaron Jones the volume. Nick Chubb doesn't get passing game work for a touchdown. Henry needs to go 120 and 2 touchdowns to get there. And while he may do it, I'm not doing it in cash. Miles Sanders, I'm going to let Gouda talk about in a couple minutes because I know he likes him. Has the right matchup, but he's just been used so poorly. Curtis Samuel is getting some run out of the backfield, and we've now got the back quarterback in there. And once we get into this range, Connor and Elliott, I think, are great for their usage. Makes them cash plays. Balaj has gotten more usage. I think we got to use Kalen Balaj in cash. You guys are my lock button cash plays, and we kind of build around that. Now, Gouda, you have an argument for Miles Sanders. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about Miles Sanders?
Yeah, so with Miles Sanders, first thing news this week was that Isaac Seumalo got activated off of IR, and that's a huge upgrade for the Eagles' offensive line. We know that the Eagles, have struggled with their offensive line all week, so that is a big addition right there. To help out. He started every game last year. I think he only missed like 2 snaps last year. He was fantastic. So that's going to be a big upgrade for them. And in general, the Eagles are getting healthy, which, should help Sanders. And also, too, with Myles Garrett being inactive as well today, the Browns defense struggled mightily last year without Myles Garrett. I'm going to find the stats, but they let up a lot, quite a bit of touchdowns. They were giving up a lot of rushing plays. Here we go. So last year, 6 games without Myles Garrett, the Browns defense allowed 11 rushing touchdowns, 33 explosive rushes, which is runs of 10 yards or more, 5.3 yards per carry, and 175 rushing yards per game. That is pretty substantial. And to be fair, the Browns defense, while they did improve somewhat in the offseason, they're essentially the same defense that they were last year. And Their numbers can be skewed a little bit because they've had those two weather games that basically no offensive production from either side, so that helped pump up their stats a little bit. But the defense can definitely be beat, so I think it's a really good spot for Miles Sanders. He's the clear workhorse guy there. He got, last week was a little unfortunate the way that the touchdowns went. Corey Clement saw one snap and he got the rush at the 5-yard line, and he happened to take it in for a touchdown. And then Boston Scott broke a touchdown as well. I think his touchdown run was like a 40 or 50-yard play. So it was just fluke things that happened that caused Sanders to not hit his value last week or to do well. And sometimes things like that, you just have to look past and just say, hey, it was just one of those games where things didn't break right, but it still looked like he was a strong play. And I still think he is this week. I think a lot of the same thing can be said. I'm much less concerned about the weather in Cleveland. It's going to be like 10-mile-an-hour winds. That's no big deal. It's going to be raining the whole game, but rain doesn't really affect the passing game all that much unless it's really monsooning where you're getting bad winds and really, really bad conditions that the field is like turning into mud. That could affect things, but I don't think that is. I don't think that's going to be much of a thing today. So I'm really into Sanders, this week.
I jokingly put on the screen there.
Yeah.
F Sanders, Doug holds grudges. Listen, I am not playing him because I feel burned, and I have just other builds I want to use. But I listen. Sanders, the work's kind of in there. I would love to see a few more targets out of Sanders. He's got the 4 targets. 2 targets, 5 targets. Like, he's just not hitting that 7-8 target volume I want to see. But if he's catching 4 of those 5 targets, that ups his point total a little bit. If he gets in the end zone last week, I'm probably using him again this week. That's the level of fickleness that I have in my life. But the way that I'm building it with Balaj and Kamara, and because I just can't get off Kamara and Dalvin Cook, I just don't have room for Sanders in my lineup. But if you're not using Kamara, and I think and we'll talk, I'll move on to that in half a second. If you're coming off of Kamara, I think Sanders is a great pivot if you are willing to get over last week. And I think you should be able to, right? We can't just hold grudges. Though I will say, someone like James Conner, who has had back-to-back incredible matchups and has done nothing with them, there's a grudge held in terms of cash trustworthiness here for me, and that's workload related, whereas Sanders has gotten the workload and the matchup is still there. Connor, I think, but there's no grudge being held in tournaments. I love Connor in tournaments this week.
Yeah. And even Connor is still getting the workload and the majority of the running back work. So that's not necessarily the issue. Looks like the issue is becoming, now that they've had essentially all 3 wide receivers equally involved, I think that's more what's affecting Connor. Yeah. You're seeing Juju. Juju is finally starting to come on after early in the year. It was really more Johnson and Claypool. So if Juju is healthy and now they're really spreading it around, we know Roethlisberger loves to pass. That really could be the effect on Connor, that they're just not using him as much because they got those 3 talented receivers that can basically beat any secondary out there.
They've gotten very pass happy. And let's not forget, too, that they love to hand the ball to Claypool around the goal line. They love to hand the ball to Ray McLeod. They'll sneak Snell in there. And that's why. But I do think Pittsburgh gets up quick on Jacksonville, and Jacksonville gives up points to everybody, to all positions. They're terrible. So if Jacksonville, Pittsburgh just gets in there, gets a couple points on the board, and they could just run the ball. And I know last week they didn't do that. They got up pretty quick on Cincinnati and they kept passing. I'm not so sure that'll happen this week. It's, you got to keep your guys happy. And I think perhaps it's time to get James Conner a little bit of work. And so that's what that's why I'm loving him in the tournament. But we were talking about cash games, or I was talking about cash games. And one of the guys that a little bit is I'm coming off of, but there's an argument to come off of. I'm actually using Kamara. There's the Alvin Kamara situation. So Taysom Hill being in the game, one of 2 things can happen. Let's say Taysom Hill gets all the snaps, okay? Because I'm still not 100% convinced that's going to happen. But let's say he does. He gets all the snaps. Alvin Kamara should probably see, I think you're going to see less target volume, but I don't know if it doesn't help him a little bit in the running game. They might hand him the ball more. And if the defense is really keyed in on Taysom Hill around the goal line, that's going to leave, less defensive convergence heading towards Kamara, and it actually might make his touchdown equity higher. I do know the threat's there with Taysom Hill, but isn't the threat always there with Taysom Hill? And doesn't Drew Brees, like to take it from that 1 yard line. That stupid Drew Brees, extend the ball. He's going to bust his shoulder again one day. He's old and frail. Like that is always there. So what if Kamara does what Kamara does? Okay, like I understand he's got a 15-point type of a floor, which is scary for 900. He needs 27 points. He needs 8 catches, 60 yards, touchdowns, really to get there. And can he? Sure. But what if he has a game like last week? He didn't have a ton of volume last week, but he has such high touchdown equity. The last thing I want to do is end this week and have Kamara do kind of what he did last week. Maybe he gets a few more rushing yards and he only gets 2 touchdowns. He gets 30 points, let's say. The last thing I want to do is miscash by 3 or 4 because I used Adrian Peterson instead of Alvin Kamara and I spent up a wide receiver, or I used Nick Chubb, who splits carries with Kareem Hunt. Like, what if Kamara just does what Kamara does? Play your best players. And listen, it's not like he's going up against the Saints, who have the Buccaneers, who have a ridiculously good rush defense. We saw what happened when he does that. It's not great. I mean, Atlanta's not good against the run. And wouldn't a good thing for Sean Payton to do to take some of the pressure off of his inexperienced quarterback? I won't say young because Taysom Hill is 30, but his inexperienced quarterback, wouldn't it be good to just dump the ball to Kamara, get really a highly convertible pass attempt to his best playmaker, and it'll make Taysom Hill look really good? That would be the smart thing to do. Now, I know that Sean Payton has this love affair with Taysom Hill, and he wants to make the guy look as good as possible. But maybe the thing that's going to make him look as good as possible is dumping the ball off to Kamara and let him do his thing. If Kamara gets you 8 catches and he gets you 10 rushes, he could put 130 yards on the board, and he could get 2 touchdowns. There you go. You're good at that point. We've got the points that we need. We're over 30 points at that point. I'm perfectly content rolling out Kamara because the other options just don't entice me all that much to come off of Kamara. If there's another higher price guy, if I felt better about Derrick Henry, I'd probably make that move. And on FanDuel, I did make that move because the receptions don't matter as much. It's half-point PPR, and there's no 100-point bonus, and all these different reasons. I have no problem going to Derrick Henry, and he is significantly cheaper on FanDuel. Like, there's a lot of reasons that I prefer him on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, PPR, bonus, I think I got to roll Kamara. That's what I got to do. Speaking of cash, Matt came in with a question, and we do love questions. If y'all have a question, please drop it in the chat. This is what we're here for, is to help you guys. Otherwise, you're just going to listen to me and Gouda ramble about things that we want to talk about. And it's going to be a lot of Taysom Hill and James Conner and guys we like to talk about. Matt wants to know if coming off of Henry to Ballage, get rid of Peterson 4. Well, that's the thing. If you're saving, you're saving $2,400. I mean, you could go up $6,400 coming off of Peterson. And so,
you know who's $6,400 this week?
Is it who is
DeAndre Swift?
Yeah, that would have been great. Don't do that. That is.
But no, it unfortunately in that scenario that Matt's laying out at that price point. I mean, in a cash game, there's nobody in that area that you're looking to use. I mean, it's in that area, the closest guy that you're going to use is either Gibson at 5,800 or you're back to Ballage at 5,600. That's like
he already has Ballage in that respect too.
Yeah, so that's a tough spot there because the guys that you're coming off of. I mean, you can make an argument for James Robinson. Not for cash. I'm saying if it's a GPP lineup, potentially.
I'm assuming this is cash. I was assuming this was cash.
Yeah, if it's
what you can do though. I don't know who has at wide receiver, and Matt tends to follow. He uses our player pool, and he's been with us for a lot of years, so he tends to think the way we do. My guess is he's already got Deontay Johnson as one of his receivers. But if you don't have a Pittsburgh receiver, there is a case that could be made that you could pivot up to Chase Claypool as your flex because it looks like you're definitely going to have Dalvin Cook. Oh, you could go 72. Well, let me finish that thought. Obviously, you have Dalvin Cook as one of your running back. So if you go Cook and Ballage, you could run Chase Claypool in as your flex. Chase Claypool, there's the upsides there. He's had 9 or more targets each of the last 3 weeks. He gets those rushing yards. He does have quite a bit of touch equity. That's an argument to be made, but Matt is saying yes. Of course, he has Deontay Johnson because we all do in cash because that's what we do. We love Deontay at 5,900 in cash. So what Matt did say though is if he went to 7, he could get up to 7,200 if he uses the Falcons defense. If you can get up to 7,200 for using the Falcons defense, put in Miles Sanders at 6,900 and go up to the Broncos defense. Broncos defense and Miles Sanders over Adrian Peterson and whatever you're doing at the defense, I think that works. So if you're looking at Cook, yeah, your choice is basically Aaron Jones, Chubb, or Miles Sanders. Aaron Jones doesn't get the volume I want. And Indianapolis, for all we've been ripping on their overratedness of their defense. They still have a good run defense. Aaron Jones just splitting too many carries with too many snaps with Jamal Williams. Nick Chubb splits with Kareem Hunt and doesn't get enough passing work. He's got like one target a week. Miles Sanders is the guy. And then you can go up to the Broncos defense. And I prefer the Broncos defense. Listen, I've been all over the Falcons because I do think inexperienced quarterback, you've got an opportunity for turnovers, but they're just not great, the Falcons. They don't get into the backfield. Meanwhile, the Broncos, this is the first time that Tua's ever played in altitude. He's still down his one of it. They just got rid of Jordan Howard. They don't have Myles Gaskin. Preston Williams is injured. I get that Breeda's come back. And last week, Denver looked awful against Las Vegas. But Las Vegas has a really strong offensive line, and Miami just doesn't. And the thing that you're going to get out of Denver is quite a bit of sacks, 2 to 4. Prior to that, 4 and 6. I mean, they get into the backfield. And so that gives you a really good opportunity to do the things that you need to do with a defense if you have that $100, which you do if you're going to use Miles Sanders. Let's see. Matt is rounding out his lineup for us. He's got Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman, and I think that's a good trio. And I don't love using Ballage with Keenan Allen, but I also think individually they're both good plays, and so I wouldn't come off of that if that's what you're working with. I have no problem with using both Keenan Allen and Kalen Ballage this week. I don't want to say I have no problem, but I have much less of a problem than I would in a lot of weeks. I think they're both going to get their work in. We had another question too from Sam. Pittman or Gallup it says DFS, but I assume it's, let's see. Sam told me he likes GPPs. He told me earlier today on Twitter that he likes GPPs. So I'm going to say GPP. Gouda, I'm going to throw this to you. Michael Pittman or Michael Gallup?
I think there's more upside with Gallup this week.
I agree.
I do. I think that, because you look at, so if you take betting lines into consideration, the Colts being home as 1.5 point favorites, and Gallup, the Cowboys are 7-point underdogs on the road. I think Dallas, Minnesota, you'll see some scoring, and I think they're kind of past the Dak injury now in a sense. They had their bye week. Dalton's back. I mean, they're still only a game out from the division lead, so they still have a lot that they are playing for, as ugly as their season has been. And, there's just so much talent on that offense. The Cowboys' offensive line is getting better. Zach Martin is back today. They're actually putting him at right tackle. They're benching the tackle that's been playing and adding using what's his name? Using McGovern at right guard. So the offensive line is getting better. Dalton will have more time to throw. Zeke could have potentially one of his better games of the season. So I think Gallup is in a better spot for a GPP play. And frankly, out of the 3 receivers, he will be the lowest owned. If people are flocking there, they're going to use Cooper or Lamb. So that too can give you some leverage if Gallup ends up being the better of the receivers today, or even if Lamb is the number 1 receiver today for them, and Gallup even is number 2, you're still gaining leverage on people that are owning Cooper. And again, at 3,700, there's not a lot that you need from a talented guy like Gallup to really pay off.
That's correct. I like Gallup. I prefer Gallup in GPP, Pittman, and cash, though my personal cash game lineup has both Pittman and Gallup, so I could spend up elsewhere. Because I think they're both. Gallup needs 10 points to hit for cash, but I also think he has 25-point upside. He gets a long one. If he gets 6 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown, you're talking 25 points. That's a pretty good game, and I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility for Gallup. In a GPP, I prefer Cooper over Gallup in general if I'm stacking Dallas, but I think for the price, Gallup is really good. And again, I know Sam likes to run GPPs, so I would say that he's probably going to want to look towards Michael Gallup. Mark is back and from a few weeks past, and he wants to know, now that the Jets are back in play, are we running a Jet stack? No, we're not. We're not running a Jet stack. We're not doing this to you, Mark. It's never going to happen. Not this week, buddy. And I know he's just joking, but it's become a running joke on this. Can we get Mark to run a Jet stack this week, Mark? I can't bring it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit to be said either with Mims or Perryman. Either, I mean, if you're doing a Chargers stack, they're probably one of your better bring back options. Not that there's many with the Jets, or even again, if on the lower end receivers, if Pittman, Gallup, even Jakeem Grant, or even Hamler, if they may be a little bit more owned than what Perryman and Mims are as a one off. I mean, there's potentially something there. Those guys should get in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 targets. I mean, let's face it, the Jets offense, there's three guys. There's Crowder, Perryman, and Mims. God only knows what the running back situation is going to look like and receptions there. So it's possible all three of those receivers see 7 to 10 targets, and at their price points, there's something that they could do as a cheap one-off in a GPP. Sure, the opportunities will be there, but it's just a matter of one, what kind of stomach do you have for it, and two, do you want to go that route?
Now, I've got Brashad Perryman as a run back on a Chargers stack, and I actually think I'm double stack back with Mims and Perryman just because it worked, which feel a little bit gross. There's no way I'm running out of stack where Flacco is quarterback.
Oh God,
that's just
no,
not going to happen. So we're not going there. And Mark is doing the same Jets Chargers stack. Listen, if you're doing that from the Chargers perspective with Herbert, awesome. But I also know Mark likes to run uber contrarian, so it would not surprise me at all if Mark's running this with Flacco. And really, if you think about it, and I'm not trying to promote a jet stack. Oh my God, we're doing this again. But if you're running Perryman, Mims, Allen, and Williams, right? Yes, you're running it with Herbert, but is it really? If you're running enough lineups, is it really that bad of an idea to just throw one out there with Flacco instead? Probably is, but again, if you want to win an entire GPP, that is contrarian. And I'll never listen. Mark does very well for himself, so I'm not about to go crap on anything Mark wants to run. Richard, I see a question in the stack and we're in the chat, but we're going to we'll get back to that in a second. But I'm going to he's running it to Flacco minus Perryman. Godspeed, my friend. Godspeed. Good luck. Hey, Richard, we're going to get to your question in a minute. It involves a little more of a conversation. And we're currently being joined by Josh Hook, the Hook Monster, for his segment, aptly titled Monster Leverage. GPP Pivots. I love that I get to use my marketing degree with a fun name. Monster Leverage GPP Pivots. You guys can find Hook over on Twitter at Hook Monster. Josh, welcome to the stream. I'm gonna let you and Gudadero go do your thing for a minute, and I'm gonna go second.
All right, sounds good. What's up, guys?
Not much. What's going on? How's everything? Ready for today?
Oh, yeah, man. I'm actually really excited. GPP week. Like, I'm kind of pumped for this week. I don't pay much cash in NFL, so yeah. But I want to start I'm fading Dalvin Cook today. That's my move. I wanted to just start off. He's going to
complete fade, no ownership at all.
No, it's not. I don't. At $9,000 at his price, there is he basically needs 2 touchdowns, 200 yards of some sort, and 4 catches. Like, that's a lot, And there is, I can see more of a shot where he doesn't hit that. I mean, it just seems more likely that doesn't hit than. I'd play him in cash. Don't get me wrong, but I see it more likely in GPP that he doesn't give you a tournament score to win, and your lineups are just going to be so much different than anybody else. Now, where I want to go leverage on this is that I still think that's a good scoring environment in that game today. I think Minnesota has a very narrow target tree between Justin Jefferson, who I preferred, and Adam Thielen. And I kind of like Dallas life last week versus Pittsburgh, or was it 2 weeks ago versus Pittsburgh? And I think with the bye week, Dalton coming off, Minnesota isn't good at getting to the quarterback at all. And the prices of Cooper and Lamb and Gallup maybe this game shoots a little bit, and or Dallas jumps out to an early lead like they did versus Pittsburgh, and we're forced into a situation where we throw it to Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen more, and Dalvin Cook maybe only gets 20 carries. He still probably has a good game, but it doesn't give you the tournament score that you need to win, and you've leveraged across 50% of the field immediately by just being on the different side of that game.
No, I like that idea a lot. I mean, there should be some points in this one, and let's face it, you can beat Dallas's defense probably any which way. So getting, so even something as simple as Thielen and Jefferson in great matchups, that'll carry ownership, but probably not what Cook will. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I have them both under like 15% ownership, and I mean, if you're just making, that's just a pretty easy heads up like flip, and then bring him back with the Dallas receiver or even Zeke too.
Yeah,
he's cheaper than I've seen him in 4 years.
He really is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Other spots, Chargers game. This kind of goes back to where I know you guys are just talking about it. I'm not recommending Flacco. But if you want to, do it. But this kind of goes back to the way the Chiefs played against the Jets. No one wanted to play them, even though the Jets were a terrible defense. But really, the Jets are they just focus on stopping the run. I don't know why. They're pretty good at it. So I kind of like running Justin Herbert by himself. Allen isn't the type of receiver I like to play in tournaments because he's so volume driven, and his price, he doesn't give me enough big play upside at his price right now. And it's kind of tough for me to see a situation where they're just going to be playing from behind, and he's going to need 12 targets to hit that. I think it's 7,400 is his price. So, but I could see the Chargers also spreading it out. Like Williams gets a deep shot, Guyton gets a deep shot, not a ton of volume, but he still has a very efficient 3 touchdown type. And sometimes the quarterback can go off, and all his receiver doesn't have a smash day. Like they get some bad second. There's going to be a lot of open guys, So just Herbert alone is maybe the way to go in that game, and I have quite a bit of exposure to that. I know there's kind of been some industry move on Ballage, and I can see it because he does have some touchdown equity today. But I mean, to beat the Jets through the air. We've seen it time and again, and I think Herbert alone, he's probably going to spread it around. And like we said, Keenan Allen doesn't get it. I mean, he's too volume dependent, and if they're control this game, I just don't see him hitting the 9 to 12 targets that we need and the type of targets we get. Another one I really like. This is my sneaky shootout call of the day. I love the Bengals and Skins game. It's bothering me some of the names I'm selecting today. Let's call.
I love that game. I love that game.
Oh, I love it. I have almost in every lineup, and I built 20 plus today, and I have some exposure to that game in every single thing. But I've only got a little different ways. So there's different ways I'm going to build this game. Like I have McKissick in lineups where I think Cincinnati gets out ahead. Or let's just talk about the game environment for a second first. Cincinnati has averaged 41 passing attempts per game, and they have a pretty concentrated target tree. Bernard will probably get 5 to 7. Higgins, Boyd, they're going to see 8 to 10 each. I'm not going to do AJ Green anymore. I've invested. I lost. It's fine. And then if we go to the Redskins side, since Alex Smith has been back, they've thrown on 65% of the plays. They've had a little bit of negative game script. But if you think that, you can put McKissick in there. At 5,300, if Alex Smith can actually throw a touchdown pass, he's thrown for 320 and 390 the last 2 weeks. He can do it. And this isn't a week I love quarterback at all. I mean, we don't have any of the scramblers. We don't have a lot of the 40-point touchdown upside or the 40-point upside that we've seen in previous weeks. This kind of goes back to, again, DFS 5 years ago where we were looking to start the cheapest quarterback possible and hopefully get 3X. But Alex Smith, if he throws you 300, you're at 15 right there. If he gets a little touchdown variance, 1 or 2, like McLaren hits a big play, or maybe Logan Thomas finally catches one of his targets. We could see a touchdown. My preference on the Washington side is I like Logan Thomas. I think if you think Washington's going to win, Antonio Gibson's your running back. If you think they're going to be playing from behind, McKissick's your way to go. I mean, he's seen 29 targets the last 2 weeks. That's insane for a running back. And if you get one in the end zone, he hits his ceiling. It's just, that's what it is. And then I probably, like I said, Boyd, Washington's defense has a lot of man schemes. They leave the middle of the field more open. I like those routes for Boyd. He's priced where he should see enough volume to he could easily hit 4X. And then I like Higgins because I think he has more big play potential.
Really interesting with this game, just how many Washington players I like for this game. It's like I'm trying to, when I was building cash I was like, oh, McLaurin's going to be awesome for cash. McKissick is awesome for cash. Logan Thomas I like for cash. Just like, just use this for a stack. And it's my issue's been the run back for the Cincinnati end of it, just because Washington's been pretty good against the pass. But I really like T. Higgins. I'm glad you mentioned him, Hook, because T. Higgins is just getting so many targets. It seems quickly becoming the favorite wide receiver for Burrow. I mean, the target volume is insane. He's not getting top coverage guys, and so he'll bounce in, running the slot, running outside, like he's all over the field, and he's just a guy who's just, it looks like he's NFL ready, and Burrow seems to like him. I do worry. My biggest concern from the Bengals side is just that Burrow's awful against pressure and watch high pressure defense, but if he can get past that, if Cincinnati's line can hold up, I do think this game could sneaky shootout. So I'm really glad that you mentioned this game. It's one that I've got. I don't know if you saw me cheering in the background. It's one that I really tend to like.
Well, I mean, like last week too, Washington ran 88 offensive plays, man. Like they don't even need to score touchdowns to hit volume today. I mean, to hit force on all of these guys. Like honestly, the one I have the least of is McLaurin at his price at 7,000. That's kind of sweet, but there's like 3 to 4 guys under 5,800 in this game that can all without touchdowns hit 4x. And
yeah, is one of the guys I mentioned in my article, Cam Sims. He's starting to get the trust of Alex Smith as well. He has 9 targets over the last 2 weeks. Looks ready to run routes. Looks ready to get open. Be some trust between him and Alex Smith. Doesn't need to do much to hit value. If he can keep this, 4 for 54, but get in the end zone 5x. That's pretty impressive. And so that's a number. That's a guy that I'm looking at. I want to go real low, and you don't want to use McLaurin. That's a guy that I think that we might have some interest in. Now, Hook, before you head on out of here, I got a question for you. For those who don't know, Hook is not just an NFL guy, but he is an NHL guy too. And NHL season is, not too far off. It might be a month and a half away, maybe 2 months away. And I'm ready for some hockey. I know you are too. And so I need to ask your best monster leverage, your best GPP pivot. I'm looking at these NHL retro jerseys, the reverse retros, and I want to get the wife to get me one for Christmas this year. And I'm a Vegas guy, but I don't really want a Golden Knights jersey. But I do. So I'm trying to decide. I was born and raised in Connecticut, even though I was an Islanders fan. I was, there's the Whalers jersey, there's the Nordiques jersey, and then that Calgary Flames jersey with the horse just looks ridiculous. Which one do I put on the Christmas list? That's the question. What's my best leverage play? Is it Quebec? Is it Calgary, or is it Hartford? I think I know where I want to go, but I'm curious about your opinion.
Man, I saw a Hartford Whalers like the white jersey the other day. Just man, I wanted it. I love that logo. I thought Hartford
that's the one that I was looking at too. I love that one.
I'm so conflicted on which team. Like, I just kind of have to. I think I always want to go with a Canadian team because, like, it's their sport. So, like, hey, I should be a Canadian team fan. I just got to figure out one. I'm not going to be a Leafs guy because I'm not that kind of person. But
that Calgary one looks amazing.
Calgary, those jerseys are cool, man. They are.
Listen, if
cool.
To me, the safest play is Quebec. Quebec's, I mean, if they get an expansion team, the Nordiques, it'll be the Nordiques. But if not, if they don't come back, well, then you've got Quebec, and it's like that's a real good team to have. They're classic, just like Hartford. If they don't come back, it is the ultimate retro. I think the Whale. I think it's going to be the Whale that goes on my Christmas list. I'm just hoping the price comes down. 180 is a little bit expensive. I can get it for 120. Maybe they'll throw a sale on it, which is unlikely. But I don't ever ask for expensive stuff. But I think this year, I think I need one. So when we live stream for NHL, I want to have something to wear. I'm thinking a Whalers jersey is the way to go.
Actually, I saw NHL.com had like 60% stuff the other day. So I was like looking to get gear for NHL streams. I didn't want
sadly not on the reverse retros. Those aren't even released until December 1st. But I just thought that was pretty cool. All right, we should probably get back to football talk, but I had to get the hockey opinion. Give people who didn't want to hear hockey a chance to run and pee. But I had to know. Hey man, like this is where are we going with this? It sounds like the whale is the way to go. Hook, thank you very much, guys. You can check Hook out over at banksterdfs.com. He's always up in the Slack chat, and he'll be ready to crush it come NHL time. But he's there for NFL too. He's got your pivot, your leverage. Also, he was my tag team partner for baseball season, and it's not that far around the corner either. I don't know. You're gonna be doing NBA at all this year, Hook, or is that the one sport you take a break from?
I don't. I always get like really excited to learn NBA at the beginning of the season, and then about a weekend I go, man, I can't be around my computer because of mayhem. I'm down.
I'm right there. I'm right there with you. Good news is we got a strong NBA team too, led by Justin Amy, and we got a strong NBA team too. That should be great. Hook, thanks so much for everything today. Best of luck this week, and I'm sure I'll slack in about 45 minutes.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Good to talk to you.
It's always fun to talk a little bit of hockey. Got to know like what's the play. Those jerseys are so nice.
Yeah.
So,
if you go for the Whalers one, those sell out like almost instantly all the time. So you got to get on top of that. But
it's on the wife. She's got to step up for her hubby. I don't ask for much. She's wonderful. We'll see what happens. But I can't stomach the price point on it, even though she'll pay. She doesn't mind, but I don't know. I'm cheap, so that's going to be tough. Before we went off to talk to Hook, great segment. Richard wanted to know what are some thoughts on Lamar for cash. I have thoughts on this. So I realized I didn't have the DraftKings thing pulled up. So the whole time you've been talking, I've been playing around on DraftKings and no one's seen any of it. But now it's up and ready to go. Lamar Jackson, I loved as a cash play. The price is getting released, and then I saw how expensive he was, and I didn't love Lamar as much as a cash game play. I think he's going to have a good week. He is one of my top stack options. He's part of my favorite tournament stack, really. I love stacking Lamar with Marquise Brown and Derrick Henry and Mark Andrews. I love that stack, but I'm just worried of his floor. He needs, if we want to 4X it with our quarterback, he needs 28 points, and he's done that once all year. This is a good matchup for him. Tennessee is really not good against the pass, and Lamar's taking deep. And they're not, it's not reported a lot, but he's taking deep shots to Marquise Brown, and it's something he's going to connect on them. He's connecting on very few, but he will start connecting on those. And at some point, he's going to connect. And if this is the week he does it, he could blow up, which is why he's a tournament option. But I just don't trust the floor right now in the cash games. I just think there are better options. I think Deshaun Watson is in a similarly decent matchup, and his ability to hide the pocket and his passing numbers have been far superior, and he's $800 cheaper, and we might need that $800 this week if we want to spend up on a second running back or spend up on a bigger wide receiver. And Watson's been great since Bill O'Brien got fired. If you take out the win game last week, 100 yards in 4 or 5 games. He's got 20 more rushing yards in all the games, but he's got 25 carries over the last weeks. He's got 20 some odd points every single. He only needs to flex it. He needs, what are we looking at? 26 points. If he goes 24, 25, it's easier than needing to get Lamar close to think. And the probability of Watson getting to where he needs to be, I think, is higher than Jackson right now. Now, Jackson could be one of those cases where it's like he just totally blows up, but I'm not going to feel as bad as I would on the week Devontae blew up or Derrick Henry blew up when I didn't have them in cash, because there are other significantly viable plays at quarterback where in those other weeks, like Derrick Henry is the only good running back on that slate, and we didn't play him because he doesn't catch passes. He was play, and it was just a bad decision. Whereas Lamar Jackson, there are other viable plays, but he's also my number one tournament option. Him and both in tournaments, but he's my favorite stack. So I'm gonna have plenty of Lamar Jackson, but I'm not trusting him in cash. Hook, Hook? Wow, I'm in a completely remote. Gouda, do you see it any differently with Lamar Jackson, or do you think he is? Should he have been in my cash game pool? He's not. Should he have been? I'll pull up that cash game pool. Should he have the quarterbacks in the cash game pool this week?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he's got the talent, and we know what he can do. But sometimes just paying up for a quarterback like that, it just hinders what you can do elsewhere. And I mean, I didn't build anything with Lamar as far as a cash game build, just because I didn't consider him there. And I just my assumption too would be if you have Lamar in there and you want Dalvin Cook, it's just going to be a very ugly lineup that you end up with. Too much punts or cheaper guys that you may be taking some risk on, and that's the kind of thing that I try to stay away from. And again, it's usually pretty common. I'm not paying up for quarterbacks, especially that high end guy, because frankly, you just don't really need to. You can get the quarterback production, similar to what Lamar is going to give you from, plenty of other guys there.
And I'm just building what it would look like if he wants to get Lamar Jackson and Dalvin Cook in the lineup. And I'm trying to see where the punt into, because right now I'm punting my cash lineup. I'm punting one position with my Gallup. I mean, I don't count Logan Thomas as a punt, because I just think with the way running back or with the way tight end is set up this week, Logan Thomas is just the best play for his price anyway. I know you like Hawkinson, and he's not that much more expensive. He's $1,000 more expensive, so maybe there's an option for that as well. But you know, I think Thomas is just a safe play at that point for 3,300. So we'll just plug him in there because I don't consider him a massive punt. Wide receiver, can I put Deontay Johnson in there? Yep. And you know, I liked Michael Pittman at 4,500. I can, yeah. I mean, you can you can make it work if you go Miles Sanders. The difference. So if we go here at, you know, let's say we go Michael Pittman because I'd like him for cash. And so that leaves us with just enough. I think we have enough players in there. So you got, you know, the players are there. But what I did was I put Miles Sanders in there. If you want to go with the second high end running back, if I have Kamara, then that's not going to work for me. But if we're sitting in this lineup, I mean, this is a cash game worthy. Yeah, you could pull it off with Lamar Jackson. I just think I feel safer with Deshaun Watson. So I think price for me is less of an issue than it is maybe for you. Especially because, I mean, look, I put together a lineup here that if I believe Lamar Jackson was the best quarterback option this week, and I don't, but if I thought he was the best cash option and I could live with not using Kamara, this is a lineup I get behind. Would we agree that if we like Lamar, this is a reasonable cash game lineup?
Yes, it is.
Because it's got all players, right? I mean, it's got all of our guys. And so if you believe in Lamar, there's a lineup you can use. I mean, you have to use this lineup, but we like Cooks, we like Johnson, we like Pittman. I mean, we like all of these players. I just think that I just happen to think that I can't get off Kamara personally, and I think Deshaun Watson's got higher floor this week. I think Lamar Jackson's got the higher ceiling, which is why I don't have Deshaun Watson in, you know, nearly as many GPP lineups as I do Lamar Jackson. So what else do we want to talk about there, Mike? What else we got in mind for today? We've exhausted all the questions in the chat. We've talked about a lot of the plays. Is there any game that we've just not talked about enough over the course of our 2 live streams that we feel like we should talk about? Like, do we need Detroit, Carolina? Is there any love for that game now that we have PJ Walker playing? Is there any love for Detroit, Carolina, or are we just off it? Because I feel every week I'm off of Detroit and you're on Detroit, and it's like we argue about it.
Yeah, no, for Detroit, I got too much worries there. I mean, between the injuries, who knows what Carolina's offense is going to look like this week with Walker in there. You know, we got Stafford dealing with the thumb issue. He's going to play, but that probably could hinder him. You know, 2 of their top receivers are out, and, you know, with Swift out as well. Who knows what the offense is going to look like? I mean, I do like Peterson and Hawkinson. I think that plays into the injuries and what's happening there. But other than that, I'm just sort of out of that game. I don't think there's really any other games, like as a game stack or anything that I'm looking at that we haven't touched on. One guy I've actually warmed up to as sort of a one-off or a pivot in where he is in his price range is actually Rashard Higgins. You know, when Beckham went out, Higgins was sort of like the waiver wire darling. Everybody thought, all right, this is his time. He's going to be the number 1 there. And then we've had these 2 games with the weather issues, and he's kind of become a forgotten man. And I've seen some speculation through Twitter. Whether it's going to happen or not, I don't know. But some speculation that Slay may shadow Landry instead of, you know, shadowing on the outside with Higgins. If that happens, that opens up a massive, massive opportunity for Higgins today. And, you know, like I said, I'm not concerned about the weather in this one. I don't think the rain is going to be much of an issue for the passing game. So I think Higgins can have a decent enough game here. And again, with where he is in at his price at $4,500, well, at that spot, you're looking at just sort of a natural pivot there. Sorry. Yeah, from, you know, I'm just pulling up the price range there. You're looking at sort of a natural pivot from Pittman. You've got even Rashad Perryman in that range. You've also got Jacoby Myers, who's going to be extremely highly owned this week.
Yeah.
And even CeeDee Lamb at 5,000, you can say that's a pivot off of him if he's going to be a little higher owned, in a potential high scoring game there. So in that spot, he is a guy that you can use. I think he's going to see some nice targets today. The Eagles secondary, like I said, is nothing to write home about, and if he can avoid Slay on a big portion of his snaps, there's definitely a path there for him.
I'd say he's even a pivot off of Rager in the in that same game. Though Rager is a one-off type of a play. I thought when you said a guy you're warming up to was going to be Calvin Ridley at his price point. We haven't talked much about the Atlanta side of this game at all because Taysom Hill is taking all of the conversation, and that's starting to lead me to believe that perhaps Atlanta is a team that we should be looking to stack in GPPs, which is scary because I don't have a lot of Atlanta at all because I've been looking at this game and saying I don't want to play this game. I do think the pace of this game is going to be a lot slower than the total would have indicated or what you would expect from an Atlanta-New Orleans game. I do think the fact that this game is in New Orleans makes a difference. I do think that New Orleans is going to want to run the ball and lead clock, and I don't think and they do have a decent enough defense that they could make Atlanta a little bit they could cause some problems for Atlanta, but I mean, you're still looking at like Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and if you're going to get them at ridiculously low ownership, and I think you will, and I think it's going to be very those guys, that's a team that you want to go ahead and stack. It's like when we used Kansas City for a number of weeks at under 10% ownership because people were afraid they were going to run, and then Mahomes puts up 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. I'm not saying Matt Ryan is Patrick Mahomes, but he's not priced like it either, and if you get an Atlanta stack for sub 10% each, you're looking at under 40% cumulative ownership percentage for Ryan, Julio, and Calvin Ridley. That's not so bad. You even throw Hayden Hurst in there because Hayden Hurst has been playing just fine. His volume is there. I talked about it in a report a few weeks ago about how the volume is there, and he's only continued to get volume from that point. He's been over 10 to 4 weeks, and he's pretty decent. Report from Paul. Paul, one of our longtime members, is coming in because we have a hard time checking up on Twitter as we're going. That reports are that Ridley is having a hard time moving laterally. So perhaps that means maybe you don't go Ridley, maybe you go Julio, especially with Lattimore out. Thanks, Paul. Update. Perhaps that's the route that you run with this game. But I do think we weren't talking about it, and no one else is talking about it. Ryan Julio, with you want to get crazy, run it with Jared Cook as your run back, there was some, Taysom to throw long, and there was some talk from Sean actually mentioned it to me earlier that he liked the idea potentially of Deontay Harris as a deep threat with Raekwon Smith being a little banged up, though it looks like he's playing. But there's some trust with him in that offense, and he gets some targets. Just a thought, if you're going super YOLO with just a thought against that Atlanta secondary. Right in there. Sam had asked the question this week: Derrick Henry or Alvin Kamara? It really depends. Cash or GP, and which site you're playing on. I think on DraftKings and cash, you're better off with Kamara because of the reception floor. I think in GP, there's no running back I'm using more than Derrick Henry in a GPP because he is capable of going 150 with 2 touchdowns more than any other running back in the NFL. And Baltimore has given up 112 or more rushing yards in 3 of the last 4. Tennessee is going to want to keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hand. They're going to want to pound the rock. Baltimore is missing some of their run stoppers on defense. Derrick Henry's the guy to go with. I do think on FanDuel, because of the less emphasis put on the reception, because it's only a half-point PPR, that I am actually, and because of the price difference, I'm actually using Henry over Kamara cash on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, it's Kamara for me in cash, Derrick Henry in a GPP, and I can't tell from looking at Guda's face if he feels differently than me about to hear Mike's opinion on this.
No, I'm kind of the same with you there. DraftKings, I do like Kamara better from a cash standpoint, and Henry's a nice pivot. Henry's going to be low owned today because of Cook and Kamara, and it's a good spot. The Ravens, the Ravens have the reputation of a strong defense, but the weeks that they've actually gone up against a good run offense, they've gotten hit, they've gotten not torched, but they've gotten run on pretty easily, pretty substantially. So Henry can definitely be the guy here, and I think he's got great potential this week. I really do.
I really like
it there. And I think he's strong for cash on FanDuel, again, because of the half-point PPR and just the way that their scoring is. And also, just back on that Atlanta thing for 1 second, something to consider as well. And this is, just for every week, when you have players like Julio and Ridley, and it's good to realize the players that are priced around them to get a better understanding of ownership. Like, we know Keenan Allen is through the roof this week. He's $100 lower than Julio. That is going to keep Julio's ownership down, because of that. And same thing with Ridley. Ridley's 7,000. Keenan Allen's going to be the more popular option, but also too at 6,900, you got Terry McLaurin. Everybody's all over McLaurin this week, and even $700 from there, you got Thielen at 6,300, who's going to be very high owned. So if it's always a good thing if you see these guys that are going to be high owned in those price ranges, and you see a guy that nobody's talking about, like a Ridley, like a Julio, it makes them strong plays just based on that. That they're going to be low owned on that, and plus too, it's a good matchup. There's no reason not to use them. It's not a place to avoid.
I do want to push back a little bit on one thing you said about all of that, and that would be the ownership for Adam Thielen. I don't know if he's going to be as highly owned as you would think, because Dalvin Cook is the most popular running back on the slate, and oftentimes, most times, people are not going to go stacking a running back with a receiver, and a lot of people don't differentiate ownership cash versus GPP. The general public tends to not try to differentiate those things, which is where we come in and we try to, explain the difference and, where that leverage comes in. And I actually think Dalvin Cook is going to be as highly owned in GPPs as he is in cash games, and which I think will lower the ownership for the Minnesota passing game, which is why Minnesota's favorite GPP stacks, because I don't think you're going to see a lot of lineups that focuses on Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota passing game, running it back with, I think, with one of the Dallas wide receivers. The problem is which one. Obviously Gallup, Cooper wanted the cheapest one. I think Cooper got a great matchup, and I'm pretty sure the lineup that I ran, and I get a really wacky with it, but I actually threw Ezekiel Elliott in there. I do think he's going to get more involved in the offense. I think the time has come to assert themselves with Elliott. I think the threat of the pass is a little greater now with Andy Dalton in there, and so. He's going to get a little more work. He's not going to see quite as many 8-man boxes. He's still got the rushing. 19 and 18 games, but it's still the passing game work. Sorry, the passing game work that's been a problem. But he's been there, and with Andy Dalton back in there, I do think that there's a pretty good chance that we see that target volume go back up to 5, 6, 7. I love him in a tournament at 65, and because he'll get passing game work, or at least he should. I think he's had the week to rest, and I don't think Tony Pollard is big of a threat. If you throw a lineup in like this, I think that's going to be fair owned, because I do think Gallup's going to be in a tournament. I think you'll get some popularity from CeeDee Lamb and Gallup. I don't know if Cooper will be as popular, and I definitely don't think an Elliott Cooper stack will be there. And Dalvin Cook's going to carry the ownership for Minnesota. So again, taking just a little bit of umbrage with what you said, I do think that, and it's too strong of a word, but I don't think Thielen's going to be that high owned, and I do think there is an opportunity there for for Dallas to get him some work, So that's where I kind of look at that, and so I do think there's actually some leverage to be had with that singing. But to the other point about Calvin Ridley. I do agree with your point about the ownership of the players around him. I do think that Atlanta passing, in the same way that this Minnesota passing game is going to go under-owned, I do think that Atlanta passing game is going to go under-owned. I just hope that if Ridley plays, that he is running well. Again, Paul saw that report that he's not running well laterally, so maybe you just run Julio. Shoot, you can run Julio, Mike Thomas, and Matt Ryan, and I just don't think people are running that stack out there. I don't want to use Michael Thomas this week because they're so worried about Taysom Hill situation. If you run this out there, you still have plenty of money to do other things. If you run a cheap defense and a cheap, which we will, a cheap defense and a cheap tight end, which we will, I think there's some opportunity. Honestly, though, if you want to run Hayden Hurst instead of Calvin Ridley. I think that's, I don't think the ownership's going to be very high on Hurst. I think in that area, I think people will be more on Hunter Henry. At that point, you might as well just spend up for Mark Andrews if you're not stacking Atlanta for only 500 more. So I think you've got yourselves a real popular or not so popular stack that can be very what's the word I'm looking for? Explosive. That's the word. I'm not there with words today. And you throw in a cheap defense. You're looking at you have $5,500. Not cheap wide receivers out there. So if you want to go, I don't know. And I don't think you need an entire lineup full of leverage plays. Like that's what this is. But you could run a really high leverage lineup out here, and be kind of okay. Let's say you just run Conley as a counter to Connor. I mean, you're going to have yourselves. I like Conley, but as for a Pittsburgh stack, if I can get this loaded up here, and that's going to give you $6,000 for a flex. I mean, that's a very high leverage lineup that's going to have a fairly low ownership across the board. Your cumulative ownership is probably going to be, I don't know, 110%. So you're going to be under that 140 number. You don't want to be that far under it. So you could throw a chalkier play in there at this point and be okay. But if you want to go, you throw Jefferson in there, you throw Robbie Anderson in there. Jefferson is a great to Ezekiel.
Yeah.
Once again, I've done the thing where I put a lineup together during the live stream. I'm like, ooh, I should enter this. This is the part screenshot, and I send it to my brother, and I go, hey, waste $12 today, buddy. And you think I won't, but I will. I did last week. We put that Breeze lineup together last week, and it bottomed out because Breeze got hurt. But I'm going to do it again this week. I like to see who of my friends I can coerce into playing a live stream lineup.
And you know what? And you know what the good thing about that one too is you're getting leverage, you're getting underowned guys, but you got so much upside with it. And I think that's the key too. Sometimes when people look at contrarian or leverage plays, they sometimes get too cute with it and they take their upside away by using a guy. Oh, he's going to be sub 5% owned. Let's get him in a lineup. But maybe he's just that because there's no upside for the play this week. These guys all are in good spots and have the upside. They're just not being used that much this week because like we said on Friday, it's one of those weird weeks where the chalk is not that heavy chalk. Really, aside from like Dalvin Cook, I don't think there's going to be much of anybody like over 20% owned. Well, Hill too, yeah.
That's it. Those are your chalk plays.
Yeah, there's not much more over 20%. So your chalk guys this week are going to be like 15%.
Yeah, and
so you can easily get contrarian and leverage, off of that. And you're going to have so many guys that are fantastic plays that are 10% or less owned just because it's one of those weeks.
One of the things we talk about when building a GPP lineup, one of the things we like to talk about when building a GPP lineup is being your main stack. And if you can find your main stack, want it to be a game where lots of points will be scored, and they do more than what we normally anticipated, but Atlanta, New Orleans is still on the higher total games on the slate. You find us with a run back. We've got Ryan and Julio with a Thomas run back. And if it's a stack that might go under, even better. You find a secondary stack, Elliott. Hurst is in that main stack too. You find a run back stack, Elliott and Jefferson. If one of those two players can be a leverage play, that's going to go against what people are doing. And I think Elliott's a leverage play. And again, we want it to be a game with a high total. Well, there's Elliott and Jefferson. They're natural run backs to each other. And then you run a third stack, a tertiary stack. If you, again, with some leverage plays, Connor is in a great spot, and you could run it back with Conley. If Pittsburgh takes the lead, they're on Jacksonville. And Conley's had 8 targets each. So the last 2 weeks, he's stone cold minimum. And that's, he's got enough upside. He needs 10 points save value. He does this week what Keelan Cole did last week. Now you're looking at 20 points, and Conley has, almost 7x to price. And then you find defense that can get to the quarterback that has can put pressure in the backfield, which is the Broncos. To me, I'm going to say something that's going to sound, I don't know if it's cocky or misguided. This is a perfect GPP lineup. It's not a perfect GPP lineup. Remember, if you watch my GPP video, rule number 8 is you're not winning the Millionaire Maker. Okay, like it's just like it'd be nice if you did, and someone has to. And if you win it, please come and victory dance all over me. But realistically, you're not winning because it's really hard to win. But this is the type of build you're looking for. Is this the right build? Probably not, because I got to be the one right build out of 500,000 people, and that's probably not going to happen. The odds of that are slim. But is this the kind of lineup that puts you in a position to win a GPP? Yes, it does. Is this the kind of lineup that follows kind of the build that we're looking for? Yes, it does. Does it make sense? Yes. Is there a story you can tell with all of the stacks within this lineup that makes sense? Yeah, Atlanta throws the ball on New Orleans. Marshawn Lattimore is out, and then they have to throw the ball back to keep up. Okay, well, that's realistic, Michael. And we're getting the ownership advantage because everyone's on Taysom Hill. No one's going to be on Matt Ryan. Is it possible that Minnesota and Dallas is kind of a shootout with both of their defenses being really poor? Yeah, and is Ezekiel Elliott the kind of guy who's going to catch passes out of the backfield? Yeah, he sure is. And he'll get tons of goal line touches. And we don't have to worry about Dak Prescott sealing inside the 5 carries anymore. And is it possible that Pittsburgh gets up on Jacksonville, they run the ball, and Jacksonville has to throw to keep up down the field to Conley, who's at 8 targets each of the last 2 weeks? Yes, there is. And is it possible that the Denver Broncos are taking on a rookie quarterback making his 4th career start in altitude that he's never done before with, a sort of a lack of weapons? And Denver is one of the best teams in the NFL at sacking the quarterback. Is it possible that they can get in the backfield 3 or 4 times, get a couple of sacks, force a couple turnovers, and is there an opportunity for a touchdown there? Well, yeah, volume and sacks and pressure leads to defensive touchdowns. So is there a story to be told for each one of these lineups that's realistic? Yes, it is far more realistic than saying I don't want to say anyone specifically because once I do that, the person that goes off, I'll never forget the Chase Claypool and Travis Fulgham week. But it is more likely that the story I can tell here is more real to tell with the Carolina-Detroit stack. I mean, to get Marvin Hall and P.J. Walker and Adrian Peterson having an old-school Peterson game, could it happen? Sure. Is it a more realistic story than the stories I'm telling you here? No. And look at the names. You're talking Pro Bowl studs. Like the only person here who hasn't been to a Pro Bowl is like Chris Conley and Hurst and I mean Jefferson's a rookie and he may be a Pro Bowler this year. I mean, we're talking stud players who've had somewhat down years or are coming off of down games or have been misused or on teams with injuries, but they're all capable of putting up big points. So when I say this is a perfect GPP lineup, what I mean is it's set up to tell the right stories and has the right ownership possibilities. But again, please don't mistake that for this is the perfect GPP line. I would like for it to be, especially if someone plays it and does really well. Please make sure you come back and tell me and let me know. Maybe if you win $1 million, and people out there in the Twitterverse watching this, if you win $1 million, you can buy me my Hartford retro jersey. $180. I'm not feel so bad if you win $1 million off of this lineup, but. Again, this is the type of lineup, and this doesn't have to be. They'll use that strategy. This is the type of lineup that can do really well for you. It's these things that, and talking through helps. Like if you guys have a friend who's into fantasy, talk to them, or more importantly, come to banksterdfs.com. We are all friends. We talk in our Slack chat constantly. These are the kinds of things that we do within our Slack chat, and it is included for $3.99 a week with everything we do. We've got articles, player pools, and of course the Slack chat, which to me is the greatest resource that we have. And we cover all the sports: baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, golf, tennis, NASCAR, MMA. I'm probably missing some sports, college sports. We cover it all for that $3.99 a week. And it gives you that opportunity to share knowledge and to have knowledge shared with you. Knowledge is power, and it's the most important thing we can do to get us where we need to be with these lineups. This lineup that I just built would never have gotten built if I wasn't just talking through it. So find people to talk through it. And if you can find some people who, do this all day, every day, which is what we do at Bankster, it's not so bad. You play a $5 double up every week and you hit it, like you've made your money back for the membership, plus $1, and then everything else is gravy throughout the weekend. We have a ton of fun. So I think we're at the point where we've covered everything that needs to be covered this week, Guda. So I think this is the point of the show where everyone can put in their last-minute lineup. They can go take some of the strategies we just talked about to finalize their cash and to put some GPPs together. And so this is the part where we go way off track, and I ask you what's going to happen to Survivor Series tonight.
I don't know. I don't even know what the card is. I haven't been following.
Oh my goodness, you're a wrestling fan. I was so excited when we talked about AEW.
I know.
And now you're like, no, man, I don't even know what's going on.
I haven't been following WWE. I've really just been on AEW. I got a little disenfranchised with WWE the past 2 years, just with so many decisions and stuff. So yeah,
it's been pretty rough. I will say I would watch a lot more AEW if Fubo And Fubo, if you're listening, if you're one of the many, many viewers who are watching this live stream right now, people who run Fubo, get TNT onto your package, dude. I pay enough money. I want to watch AEW. Like, you're killing me. You're killing me. I want to watch AEW.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Survivor Series is tonight. I think I'm going to watch that on the big screen while I'm watching the Raiders and Chiefs on my iPad. And I think that it's supposedly the Undertaker's farewell, but I think they're going to run an angle. I think he's got one more match in him. I think they're going to try to get him out.
They definitely do. They're either going to try to get him back for WrestleMania or some stupid Saudi Arabia show. Yeah, no, I think they're going to get him for WrestleMania, and I think I'm not sure who's going to be the one. Maybe this is where they pivot Randy Orton for one last run with him, or something, or another shot with AJ Styles, or the Fiend maybe. But Fiend's, he's not on the show, so maybe something. I'm interested to see what happens with the Undertaker. Yeah, it'd be cool. I mean, I won't watch it live because I'm not going to sit through like 3.5 hours or however long these pay-per-views are. But I'll watch it during the week. I'll fast forward through stuff just to see what they do with him, just because it's always cool to see the Undertaker. And quite honestly, I've appreciated it. If you haven't been watching their new Thunderdome setup, with the fans virtually, is pretty cool. I've gotten really used to it. It's pretty exciting, pretty interesting. I look forward to it. Okay, since you don't have anything for Survivor Series, you got any words of wisdom for the Sunday night game for Las Vegas and Kansas City? Like one guy we want to look at, or anything you want to do? Devontae Booker. Yes, that is who I have two in my lineup. Yes. Love Booker. Yes, it's going to I mean, if you believe in the narratives, I know Andy Reid was pretty pissed off after the last game, the way the Raiders celebrated and stuff. So if Reid's coming out for blood and right, the Chiefs are coming off their bye week. Yep. Right? I mean, Andy Reid's teams are just like beyond insane after their bye week. I think he's lost like twice in his whole career, and his teams average over 30 points a game, just like ridiculous numbers. And the Raiders defense is just not that good. So I think that this is going to be a heavy passing game for the Raiders, which kind of takes Josh Jacobs out of it. And Booker has looked good. So I think he's going to be a great cheap option to help you fit a couple of guys in there. Well, I'll tell you, Papa Bankster, my dad is, he is a tried and true fan of whatever the local team is. So we grew up Giants fans, but he has become a big Raiders fan now. And he told me 2 weeks ago, he's like, dude, watch out for Devontae Booker. He's playing well. The Broncos used him wrong. And I'm like, Dad, he's terrible. That's why the Broncos didn't use him right. But then he had 2 good weeks. Now, last week he had the revenge game. But listen, if the Chiefs take a big lead, and I think they will, and I love Mahomes. Like I'm captain in Mahomes, but I've got Booker in my lineup because I do think he's going to see the field on quite a few snaps. My dad will be so proud if he's not currently watching, but I will make sure to know that he got mentioned. Hi, Dad. Thanks for the Devontae Booker advice. If he does well, everyone can send their messages to me, and I'll pass them along to Papa Bankster and let him know that he did something. He did well today. So yeah, I think we both agree. Like, hey, look at that, Devontae Booker's our guy. I don't have any other, pearls of wisdom. I do think Tyreek Hill. I mean, touchdown equity is ridiculous. I think I've got Hill, Mahomes, Kelsey, Booker. Well, I went to high end. Sammy Watkins is going to be out, so probably Demarcus Robinson. I haven't looked at what the pricing is, but Robinson's probably on the cheaper end, which would be a good insert too. Robinson's a little more expensive than you think, but I think so. I'm pulling it up right now. There's no way I'll get it on my computer in time, so we're going to do the Robinson's 44, so it's a little more expensive than you think. Yeah. And actually, I don't have Tyreek Hill, even though he has the upside. I've got Kelsey in the lineup instead, but no, I don't. I added Tyreek Hill. I had enough money to make it happen. So yeah, I've got Mahomes and Hill and Robinson. And I do think, you run it back with you've got Ruggs, who's got the upside, but don't sleep on Nelson Aguilar. My dad likes him too, and I keep telling him how much Aguilar sucks. But Aguilar has been used well in the offense. He can't catch a pass to save his life, the easy ones, but the hard ones seems to make miracle catches on. And I do think the Raiders are going to be throwing, so I think there's an argument to be made for some Aguilar love in this game. So, all right, we've rambled enough about the late game, some wrestling, and everything else. Folks, thank you for joining us this week on the Bankster DFS Week 11 Live Before Lock. For Michael Gudadero at The Big Gouda, I am Doug Shane at Bankster17. Check us out, banksterdfs.com. $3.99 a week gets you access to everything that we do. We'll catch you guys later, and best of luck.